Let's talk a little bit about the scandal in England right now. It's shocking to me. I've read those tabloids. Did you have any idea, A, as Prime Minister, and B, since you've left office, of the enormity of what's going on? They seem like a bunch of gangsters over there.
Well, I mean, there's also some very good journalists out in the UK as well. So, you know, one shouldn't take this as meaning that all of British journalism is.
I'm not saying all of British journalism is like that, but the excesses that we're reading about now. Were you stunned by this?
You know, if I'm absolutely frank about it, I think we've learnt to live with a certain standard of behavior, and I think the reason why it's important now, as a result of what has happened, to open the whole thing up, and there's going to be an inquiry in which we can look at the relationship between, you know, the media and people in public life and politics and so on. I think there's a whole set of aspects of this that need to be looked at, should be looked at, because in the end you want a free and vibrant press, and it's a vital part of a democracy. But I think what has really certainly shocked the British people, actually, has been the absence of just basic standards in the way things are done.
Because it doesn't look like there were any standards. I mean, they would intimidate politicians in a horrendous way, some of these excesses. You understand that?
Well, I've got pretty long experience of dealing with.
Did they intimidate you?
I don't know about intimidate me, but if you were caught up in a media storm, you certainly knew you were in it.
I mean, did you know how powerful, you know, these tabloids were in terms of trying to scare politicians and warning them if you didn't do what they wanted, they were going to go after you?
Well, the media is very powerful in the UK. Look, the media is powerful everywhere. And one of the things I think that any sensible investigation of this has got to look at, and try and do it dispassionately, you know, because the politicians have got their point of view, the media have got their point of view. There's always going to be an uneasy relationship between the two. There will be here, never mind back in the UK. But what is important is to realise that in a world of 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week media, with all the new technology and so on, and with the huge competitiveness there is in the British media, people desperate to get their stories and you know, get ahead of the competition. Unless you have some sort of framework within which people agree to operate, and everyone acknowledges that and abides by it, then you do get a pretty ugly situation.
But you saw some of the ugliness. You saw some of the ugliness when you were Prime Minister. And I guess the question is, did you investigate what was going on?
Look, one of the strange things about this is, if all this had happened, you know, all of this information had come out and people had been aware, because obviously I'm not aware of the specific instances. In other words, if this great furore had happened some years back, then yes, you could have used that as the opportunity then to say, let's have a look at all of this. I think, frankly, if anyone 6 months or a year ago had said, I'm going to have now a major inquiry into how the press operates in the UK and the relationship between the media and politicians, you would have found it very difficult. Just before I left office, I actually made a speech, this is about 4 years ago now, exactly on these issues, describing what I thought the problem was and describing why I thought there had to be a debate. And I have to say, it wasn't one of my more successful experiences, since, you know, at the time, the mood just wasn't for investigating that at all. I think what this has done is it's opened the issue up, so let's open it up and look at it.
There's a story out there in England right now that you urged Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, to hold back in criticizing Rupert Murdoch and his empire in England, because he would come back and slam you if he were to do so. Is that story true?
It is absolutely and categorically untrue.
What happened? I mean, what did you tell Gordon Brown?
I didn't tell him anything in respect.
You never discussed this issue with him?
No. I mean, the issue for us in the UK has always been, as politicians, and this is part of the trouble. You know, you're a political leader. You're in a situation where the media are very powerful. And I think one of the things that my successor, David Cameron, was talking about the other day, which was interesting in a way, was just how, when you are a major political leader and, you know, you're trying to fight elections, you're trying to govern the country, you can only communicate, in a sense, through the medium of the media as it exists. I mean, it's a difficult relationship to have, and at times, you know, as I said the other day, I think if I go back over the last decades, you know, I don't think there's a single political leader in Britain who wouldn't have felt uncomfortable about the relationship at points, which is why it's a good idea to examine it, and then, you know, you can see how you put it on a more healthy footing.
Did you have any reason to believe you were hacked, your phone was hacked, your records were hacked, anything along those lines?
I don't, but I mean, I didn't have a mobile phone when I was Prime Prime Minister, which is probably just as well. But I don't. But I keep reading that it's possible that I have been, but I honestly don't know about it.
I want to just read to you one paragraph that jumped out at me in the New York Times on Saturday. It involves your wife, Cherie. I'll read it to you. This is from the New York Times on Saturday. Cherie Blair, wife of former Prime Minister Tony Blair, was regularly tortured in print by the right-leaning Daily Mail because she made no effort to cultivate it and because it was not an admirer of her husband's Labour government. In a stream of articles, the Mail portrayed her as greedy, profligate, and a follower of wacky alternative medicine regimes, selecting unflattering photos to make her look chunky and ill-dressed, her mouth invariably curled in a strange rictus. I mean, do you remember the way they tortured her?
Pretty much.
Was that accurate?
Pretty much.
And you had to live with that.
Well, you know, look, it's a privilege to do the job, and you ended up being pretty robust about these things. But I mean, the short answer to you is, and in a way, I'm quite surprised how shocked you guys are over here.
We're pretty shocked.
Yeah,
yes.
and maybe we
I'm
just
shocked that you're not shocked.
You know, I lived with it for kind of 15 years at the top of politics. And one of the things I think it's important in this, since, you know, it's important to say this, politicians are always going to think the media are out to get them. Okay, so you've got to leave all that to one side, even within myself. And in addition, people are entitled to their views about political leaders, and they're entitled to dislike me or my wife or anyone else. I think what is important is to realize this is not about one group of newspapers or one part of the media or one type of procedure, whether it, you know, in this case, hacking. It's about a whole range of things that need to be looked at so that we understand what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable. Because in a way, you know, what I was trying to say to you earlier was that I think as a result of this, over the years, you know, you tolerated what in a sense is intolerable. But you did it because, look, when you're the Prime Minister, you're running a country, if you go out there every day and start complaining about the media, you know, the public say, well, look, that's fine, but get on with your job. So in a way, it's difficult for an existing Prime Minister, an existing political leader, you know, someone who's actually in office, to have this type of debate. But I think now that this has happened, it may be the thing that, in a curious way, gives us the opportunity to get a more healthy relationship, and where the types of standards that you guys, I think, probably do have here, or so I understand, are then assimilated and regarded as natural and normal back home.
I hope so.
Yeah.